I asked Google Gemini what the main talking points were ahead of this weekend's derby, and it said crisis of confidence for both clubs, new signings, will they or won't they play, and something about tactical this and that. Whereas everyone I know has just been on a bender since Onana's departure was confirmed, even though his replacement, whose name we can't even pronounce, seems more likely to batter the ball into his own net for a laugh than claim a cross. What a time to be playing Moneybags Manchester City, who are no doubt much closer to the top of the table I've refused to look at since about 2019. In the blue corner then, Phil from Sale has kindly joined us despite the anxiety of his car being held hostage in Old Trafford, true story. And from that very parish, Andy P on his podcast debut, and Roy's back to represent the youth. We're going to start with Phil though. We've all heard about how terrible United are. That's all we've been reading. What is the blue view of the start of this season?
Very, very up and down. This is almost obvious probably from the Club World Cup onwards, and wondering how that was going to pan out, and the guys not getting a break and all that kind of stuff, and thinking, well, if we do well, hopefully get to the semis, final, who knows, maybe win it, good confidence, hit the ground running into the season, all that kind of stuff. But then come November, December, are we going to be struggling? Because they've not had a break. So to go out after the group, it was like, oh, it's not really done either there. So I think even coming into the season, it was very, we've not really had a pre-season. We've had a big holiday, and then they just started playing. Roll on Wolves, it was wonderful. It looked good. It looked like he'd answered a lot of the queries. Pep had answered a lot of the queries, a lot of the issues that we thought of last season. We were coping without robbery, 3 scoring, beautiful. Spurs, even most City fans have said, it's just Spurs, and we just never know who's going to turn up when we play Spurs. And that isn't to say they always beat us or they get one over on us, but yeah, it's Spurs, and you just almost never know what's almost as bad as a derby. Brighton was probably the most concerning, because that was most like last season, in that we started it okay. We were controlling the game okay. We'd gone one ahead, missed a few chances, kind of sat back. They got an equaliser. We went, no, end of the world. And then they scored again, and then we've lost 2 on the bounce. And that was very reminiscent of last season. So a lot of reasons to be hopeful, I think, in the players we've seen, but still not sure everything's firing on all cylinders, as we've gotten spoilt by over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And that's more than enough football dealt with, because there's loads of other podcasts that'll do that. I'll tell you something, when I was a kid, the 5-1 at Main Road felt like, when I think that it was only like 5 or 6 years between that and the 5-0 when it felt avenged, those intervening years felt like forever, even though United were getting really good for most of them in between. Since then, I think City have put 6 past United twice, like in the last few years. Well, certainly about 2011 or whenever it was at Old Trafford.
10
and then there seemed to be one not long ago, like 3 years ago. Honestly, like they've barely registered United have been that bad. Is there ever a time when, despite how good City have been, is there ever a time when you lot like don't fret about United?
Probably about that 4 or 5 years ago, we got to that stage, because it was still always a derby's a derby. You never know what's going to happen, kind of thing. It's very interesting how it swapped places. I think certainly that, if I think through the noughties, I know we said we can get back to that a bit, where you were by far the better team, certainly compared to City through that period. Yet we had a few good results. And then it's now kind of that swap places, but it's still anything can happen kind of thing. But I think for me, went through a period, certainly 4 or 5 years ago, up to 2 years ago, where you just felt invincible. I'm guessing like you guys through the 90s and noughties and all that kind of stuff. Where literally, for a City fan of many years, it's like, so used to the City-itis and stuff going wrong and all that. But, every game you think, well, if we turn up, we're going to win, no matter who we're playing. Whereas now it's starting to creep back a bit now, and certainly in any game other than a derby, interestingly. So those derbies have become the ones where we used to sometimes beat you against all odds. It's felt like that a few times over the past 4 or 5 years, where you have beaten us against all odds. It's been very strange seeing United fans coming into derbies, not confident. But when there's a real, if nothing else, you're always confident. So, to see you coming in unconfident in the last few years has been strange. And then you've got a good result.
So you mentioned many, many years. Roy's going to go back a long way shortly, but I want to go back to 40 years So, friend of the podcast, Murph, told me this afternoon that it's the 40th anniversary of the 3-0 at Main Road when United are really riding high. You told me earlier that you might have been at that game, but you've forgotten. Let me bring Andy in to remind you what happened.
Do you want the whole story from the start, or just this?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you. I could set the scene because I think it was at the start of that amazing run where United either just missed out on Tottenham's record. They won the first 10 games and not the 11, and
the
it
11
looked
was
like
amazing.
United were finally going to win the league under Atkinson. They'd won the FA Cup. They looked really, really good. Sadly, there was some kind of TV boycott or strike or something, so most of that footage doesn't exist. But that game definitely does, because I used to have it on Greaves' Six of the Best as a kid, and I used to watch it pretty much every day for a spell. Brilliant game. Brilliant for us. What about for you, Andy? Because you're 1 or 2 years older than me. It predates my first. It's about 5 years before my first away game. So tell me what happened from your point of view.
Right. Well, my mate was just about to get kicked out of the Coppers, so he decided that we didn't need a ticket. We were going to go to the big gate at the back of the Kippax, where if there was fighting, everybody used to get lobbed out of there because he would know somebody who was going to get us in. So I said, right, okay, fair enough. So we turn up on the day. They are lobbing people out because, of course, it's going off inside. And this is probably an hour and a half before kick-off, something like this. So this copper recognises my mate and then tells him to piss off. We're not coming in. So it's like, all right, okay. So after about 20 minutes of literally sort of begging, we're in, and we're in the corner part of the United part of the Kippax. So we decide, just for a laugh, because there's loads of time, we'll see how far we can go all around the ground and see if we can get back into the United part of the Kippax. So we then go into the Platt Lane, into the North Stand, down the front, and we go up the Players' Tunnel, where obviously 2 young lads, we get sussed straight away. So we're back out of the tunnel and then over towards the North Stand. So through the main stand, into the North Stand, and over towards the open part of the Kippax. So it's getting a little bit closer to kick-off by this time, and it's starting to go off underneath as well, so that what United fans were in there was getting a bit lively. So we just said, right, we'll stay where we are and we'll watch the game from there. United, I think from that clip, I think United scored twice at that end. And when you look at the North Stand, it is absolutely manic full of United fans. We'll go downstairs at half-time to get a drink, and it's just rowing everywhere. Managed to get a couple of pints when you could carry them back up into the stand and up in there. And I said to my mate, I said, we're going nowhere now for the rest of the game. I said, we'll just sit tight here and we'll watch the rest of the game here. Then he went on to win 3-0. That was about it for us. And then sort of keep your head down as you're going out the back of the North Stand, and then away up to back into Chorlton, where we come from.
Is it generally accepted on both sides then that this was the time that United outnumbered City that day, or is that an exaggeration?
I don't know whether. Certainly, you had the old cage in the Kippax, which was full of away fans. Then you've got the open part of the Kippax, which was full of away fans. The Platt Lane was full of away fans. And then, well, you can see what you can see in the North Stand, who's ever's in there, so to speak. So, but bearing in mind, the City part of the Kippax, that was a big stand, Was it? Could you hold 20,000 people in there, Phil? That was a massive stand on its own. There was certainly a lot of United in there that day. But
so you would have just been windmilling, would you, Phil? You just had arms swinging everywhere, looking for people like Andy.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of those. In me saying obviously I've clearly blanked that out. So 85, 86. So that's just after we've just come up back out the second division, haven't we? That season. So I'll have been going to games, whether I was at that one or not. I don't know whether that was one of that era. So I'll have been 12, 13 round then. So whether I'll have been dragged back by my dad kind of thing. We're not quite going to a derby for the obvious in that period of football or not, I don't know. But it is certainly one that I know Murph has gone on a lot to me about over the years, and implying that there's always more United fans in Main Road than there ever was City fans. But it is your record attendance after all is Main Road, don't forget. Is it against Arsenal? 83,000?
Yeah. 82,000.
Not even
blah,
in your
blah,
own.
blah, yeah.
Roy will know. You
was it not
certainly there, were you? No, that's a record win. 10-0 win. Go on, Roy. You would have been there, wouldn't you?
United's
just after the war, I guess.
United's record league game. I'm just writing about it for another bloody book I'm churning out, and it was Jack Rowley, it was against Arsenal 1947, 82,400. And a couple of weeks later, this is incredible, they had 81,000 for a cup tie against Bradford Park Avenue.
City did.
Who were then a league side. And then they got through that, played Yeovil Town, who were non-league, and there was another 80,000. So there was three inside about 6 weeks. There was 240,000.
Sorry, they were all United games you're talking about, aren't you?
Those were all United games. Yeah. So United were full of, Main Road was full of United fans those days, as opposed to 85% in this one that Andy's talking about.
I have to say, Roy, next time you mention that book you're churning out, get someone else to do your marketing. If you want to get in touch with us, anyone watching or listening to this, please do. creamofmanchester18@gmail.com, and you can giddy yourself silly with any shorter clips on all the socials. You will find us on all the socials, but we are looking forward to the, I don't know, probably the 459th Manchester derby, something like that.
27th.
What is it?
I think so. It's only 190 something. Only the radio's been going on.
I've got 115 written in front of me. Is that something else?
No, miles more than that.
No, it's more than that. No. They should all be draws unless United win.
This is what Dennis Law used to say. Pretended he never wanted either side to win. He just wanted it to be a draw all the time, and everyone's happy. And I never believed it.
Yeah, I don't know about everyone happy.
Yeah. Nobody's happy with it. Right. We were talking about United playing at Main Road for a time, their home ground. Roy, you weren't quite, that wasn't quite your first home games, was it? Main Road. United were well back at Old Trafford by then. But you remember the is it 55, 56 or 56 season? When did City win the Cup? 56?
6.
Beat Birmingham, yeah. Well, United won the league and City won the Cup. Well, consequently, it was the Charity Shield in the October, because they were always they were midweek games. They were not at the beginning of the season in them days, and they should always have been played at the home of the champions. But United's floodlights hadn't opened then, so the game was played at Main Road. It was actually, surprisingly, there was at least half of the game shown on the BBC on a Wednesday night, and my hero was Ray Wood, the goalie, and he got hurt. And Kenneth Wolstenholme's rabbling on about the game, and he doesn't say how, but Wood takes his shirt off, and Duncan Edwards actually put the shirt on for about 15 minutes. Then even more bizarrely, they got hold of young David Gaskell, who was sat in the stand, 16 years of age, brought him down. He come on and put the shirt on, and Kenneth Wolstenholme's still going on here about Ray Wood. So you give that a miss. And it's perhaps appropriate because Dennis Pilot got the goal. And Dennis Pilot was born near Main Road. And that's one of the better books that didn't need promoting, Andrew, but that I wrote about Dennis. And he'd gone to Main Road with his dad to be signed up with City. And he sat in the foyer at Main Road waiting for someone. And he's waiting for about half an hour. And his dad said, "I'm not hanging around like this." And he left. And he knew Frank Swift. And he told Frank Swift. And Frank Swift told Busby. And Busby got hold of Dennis, because Dennis was Manchester Boys' captain. And in my opinion, one of the great United players. One of the great players. But that wasn't my first memory of United and City. A first memory. I didn't go to it. But City won. I'm going to spit this out, Phil. I'm sorry about it. But City won 5-0 at Old Trafford. And in later life, I was told a great story, because United reporter Alf Clark, God rest his soul, got killed in Munich. He bled red. I mean, United could not do any. I mean, he made Paddy Crerand look like a Liverpool fan. He just, and I believe he walked to the boardroom and he saw the City director he knew. And he said, "I'll tell you what, that was two bad teams out there today, wasn't it?" And City had just won 5-0, so that was the sort of...
Lucky class.
Two bad teams.
Was it?
Do you remember on Sunday, if you can point that out? Two bad teams and a 5-0 City win.
You'd take that.
I'll take that. I'll take
Yeah.
that.
We don't know what to expect anymore because I think like one of us is expecting that we might have to keep goal. So we'll see. 5-0 might be a minimum.
Does that
But
mean I'm
Roy,
taking my boots?
Yeah, you should. Well, yeah, you'll be in a different kind of boots, as we all know. But I'll come on to that. Right? Do you remember purples being a thing? Do you remember were there lots of people at that time still going to watch both clubs?
There were, because of course you've got no Sky TV, you've got no live football, you've got the radio, and you wanted to watch a game of football, so you've got a choice. You could watch United or City's first team, and then the week after the reserve sides, which would be full of really good players, or you could go and watch both sides. I think that was probably still a hangover from the days when United played there, from 46 to 49. And I think people just like the football and wanted to watch a game of football, really, in fairness. I mean, the first time I went was about 1960 to Main Road, but I do remember the 62 game because obviously City get accused of relegating United in 73 when that's technically...
I've got a tattoo about that if you want to see it.
We're already going to be
74.
But I had
really
a
got a
similar
tattoo?
one. I had a similar one in 1962, 63 season when we had a good side because Law was playing for us. And we were in the bottom four and in the cup final the week after. And it was a really vital game. And City dominated. Alec Ali, he was a decent centre forward for City. He scored early doors. At the end, when it was open, but they just had the old scoreboard, that was the opposite end to the north stand, isn't it? But it was a completely open except for a little scoreboard. And he scored down that end. And I was in the Platt Lane end. And about 5 minutes to go. And if we'd have got beat, it was seriously, because City may have stopped up. And Dennis Law's going away from the goal towards where the Kippax was. And Harry Dowd, the City goalie, seemed to follow him as though he was going to drop some £5 notes or something on the floor. And he suddenly dived down at Law's feet, going away from the goal. Dennis took advantage and fell over. And the referee gave a penalty. And Albert Quicksall picked the ball up, put it down, and just slotted it on. 1-1. United was safe and City were down. And 10 days after, we won the cup and hello, Vienna, and off we went through the sixth, chasing success. But that was a pretty special game at me.
Going from that then, from when people were happy to watch City one week and United the next, was it a big shock to you when you had to get all your bother boots on and your butcher's coat on, Roy, and you started steaming into people and knocking people about instead?
It was. That's when I lost all my teeth, actually, at that time. And now, I mean, of course, I was too old and I was married, kids, and all of it. I mean, the 74, the year we didn't meet. Oh, we did meet. We met in the League Cup, the 74-5 when we were second division. I mean, that was some of the earliest games that you could go to, especially away from home. No, I was a boring old fart and gave it a lot of that miss.
You two, Andy and Phil, must have. I'm guessing you grew up a mile or two away from each other. If you grew up in Sale, Phil, I'm presuming that.
I was actually Bagley over in Wivenshaw.
All right, okay. So that is really.
And I escaped.
I know Bagley, and there's a lot of blues down there, aren't there? And
I went posh like Carolina Hearn, yeah.
All right.
Wivenshaw to Sale.
What was it like just before that period in the 80s when City started getting relegated again? What was it like between the two then? Because the derbies in the 70s that I'm not old enough to remember look really tasty, like on and off the pitch. Like there was a lot of, it wasn't just Mike Doyle and George Best, was it? There was a lot going on.
Yeah, it was. It's like say 70s a bit before my time, but certainly after I first started going in the very late 70s, it's like I remember that one. But then into that early 80s, it was always a bit even Stevens. It was always odd, I think, for our finishing where we did through that period, and second to the mighty Liverpool in 77 and all that kind of stuff, 2 points off them. It makes you think the 81 Cup final could have been different, all those things. Yeah, obviously you were consistently winning trophies through that period. You were we were certainly, I would say, equal or even through the 70s above you. Obviously not just taking into account the kind of relegation in the middle of that, but you were still winning FA Cups every other year and stuff like that. That always seems odd when you look back at it now. It looks like we did nothing and you did lots. Like I say, growing up in that period, it was probably even Stevens in that South Manchester area, certainly at school, half and half City United. And I just remember lots of draws through that period. And then we just plummeted and had that horrible 80s up and down into the 90s kind of things. Yeah, it was, I can't even think any that stand out other than just lots of draws. Like I say, Gary Bailey kind of stands out, I think, more than City players in net. Not doing that well, a couple of 2-2s at Old Trafford. And them always being, if not a bit of a anticlimax in the end towards it. And that's probably coming from the 70s, where you had those real characters playing. And I think there was maybe that, certainly on the City side, slightly less characters than there were then with the Mike Doyles and the Franellis further back and that kind of thing playing in those derbies and the famous dive of Franelli for of George Best kind of thing and all that. There wasn't really that into the 80s, and it was all like it was trying to get a bit more serious, a bit more professional. And it's like, I think for a derby, we'd all rather see them clowning about and diving and packing each other down and going for broke.
Living right next to Old Trafford, though, Andy, you must have had some fun.
Originally coming from Chorlton, though. But school, because I went to a Catholic school, even though it was in Moss Side, it was predominantly United. We all seem to be young United fans in there. My first away derby was about 77-ish, I think, and City beat us 3-1. I got to the games in them days because my next door neighbour was a City fan. Her and her father and the family used to sit in a Platt Lane. And City used to allow you to buy extra tickets. So if you went down with a voucher at the back of the season ticket, then you could get an extra ticket.
They give them away, don't they, to schools now?
So she used to, the father used to go down and he'd get a ticket. So 77, 78, when I was still at school, I was sat in the Platt Lane because my next door neighbour used to get us tickets. So I think the first one we lost 3-1. I think the next one we won 3-1. In fact, I saw the goal the other day. It was a Steve Coppell. It was a really icy pitch, and the ball bobbled out the wing, and he just sort of whacked it, and it flew over the goalkeeper into the net in the Platt Lane. Like I say, funny enough, I
know the goal you're on about. It's a lovely chip.
Yeah, funny enough, even though it was always really hectic outside, I don't seem to remember that much trouble. Certainly not in the Platt Lane anyway, where I was. I didn't seem to remember that much trouble in the ground in the late 70s. Obviously, when you come outside, it was certainly more lively then. But yeah, certainly.
I was always a Platt Lane boy, Andy. I was always a Platt Lane boy. I was never really a kit-back. I was going to say my brother was, certainly when he hit 15, 16, he was always in the kit-backs. Yeah. Whereas I was always kind of Platt Lane and then moved into the North Stand later on, and that became the noisier bit. But yeah, on the benches in Platt Lane. When my mum sat there,
the wooden benches.
So they were terrible. Right. In fact, I think them benches ended up at Lancashire Cricket Ground. I remember sitting on them for 5 days watching an Ashes test. They were awful.
Yeah, green ones, horrible.
Green, purple, yellow, were they, Phil?
Yeah, all the different areas. Yeah, normally purple in the corner we used to sit.
We're coming towards the end then. Go on, Roy.
Being a Salford lad, born and bred, in fairness, you just didn't see or know City fans. I mean, that really was a hotbed of United, and as I say, I didn't mix with any at all, really, until I started going to Main Road for United, and then that's the first time I really came across them.
You're all right out of that, though, are you?
Yeah.
Quite happy with that.
Nothing adverse happened.
For that, Roy, that was actually one I hadn't realised quite how obvious it was, because it was something that we'll often touch on or talk about, in the very rough scheme of things. Don't know if you'd agree or not, but you've just like to kind of touched on it there. Not just Manchester itself, and I know nowadays and the Sky Age and anybody can support any team and all that kind of rubbish. But always came up to me that very much the kind of east and south, so Stockport is very City, west and north, Somford is very United. But even I always found pushing out further than that. So almost like when you get to your Cheshire and your Derbyshire and stuff like that, is predominantly more City. At the same time, heading that west out of Manchester and then into Lancashire, and I know they don't pretend to be Bolton fans or whatever, but you think more United in that north and south. And I just thought, oh, well, it's one of those things. But it was actually, I'm not sure who I was chatting with about it, and said it was more to do with the kind of train lines, kind of pre-war train lines that came into the ground, into the city. So obviously all those ones coming in from the north and the west came in through Old Trafford in that way. So it was easy to get to Old Trafford. All those coming up from the south and Derbyshire way, you could either get to the city centre and walk easily to Main Road. And that's primarily where it came from. It all gets mixed about now. We're now in Seong, so I'm southwest, southwest. So I'm certainly skirting in owned enemy territory. But yeah, I never realised it was more down to the layout of the trains. It's as much to do with those.
We never expected a history lesson on this pod. Amazing. Well done. I cannot let you go, though, without asking, which the same question I could have asked you this time last year, but surely this season it will come. What is going to happen this year? That verdict has to come on City this year, doesn't it? And because the City fans I used to speak to about this all the time were all people I play five-a-side with, and that doesn't happen anymore. So I don't know what's going on with this anymore. Like, what do normal non-internet City fans think about? Like, A, how long it's taking. B, do people still largely sort of feel victimised and go on about UEFA and stuff? Or are you sort of thinking, right, okay, everyone knows, let's just take the punishment and whatever it is, we'll just cough up?
We still boo everyone. And the anthem that's played in the ground with boo.
Yeah.
Well, it's even like that, for the Premiership one, we all boo that. Even the kind of UEFA one we boo, and we're not really sure why, but, we don't boo it because we like to think we've got some kind of traditions that we didn't want to keep going. I don't know, it's that mix of victimising. I think as we've not done so well last season has taken the sting out of it a bit, even with us. I think City fans are as annoyed in the just get a decision out there, whatever it will be, and I'm very much of the grounds, not sure which way around to put this in front of you three, but if we're guilty, then if we're found guilty, we're guilty, and we take whatever punishment is dished out, and that's absolutely fair. And I wouldn't say any different to anybody else, City included. As to what I think will happen, if you want to know that, and whether this says as much about the kind of Premiership as anything else, whatever, and why it's taken so long, and be it a really tricky VAR decision that this is, which is why it's taken so long for them to come to a decision on it, is I think for the majority of the charges of what we've been accused of, this specific wrongdoing, I think we'll be found innocent on it. Or not guilty or unproven or whatever crap they kind of come out with to kind of try and hide it in some way or form. But off the back, so I don't think that's necessarily across the board. So then when you talk about all the charges that are related to not cooperating, yeah, we'll be found guilty of those because we've not cooperated. Because we've been the first to say from day one, it's like we've given you the books, we've given you the figures, we've told you what it is. We've been found innocent once by or unproven in another arena. No, why would we help you? So off the back of that, what punishment it'll be, I imagine a big fine. And that, again, I think potentially says more about the Premiership, that what they want is a big payoff. To be able to pay all their lawyers and all that, to pay for the champagne at the next few years, thingy doos, and that's and how they can save face on it now. So it'll be this mixed bag of some, yeah, you're guilty of some, so we were right, and we've got a bit of money off you, but we're not really going to punish you because, rightly or wrongly, we are up there now as a bit of a draw, for money into the brand that is the Premiership.
Is it a key cultural difference, that? Which is really what this podcast is about, rather than the on-field stuff. Is it a key cultural difference that between United and City, or am I seeing it through a prism that City fans, by and large, seem to back the club and will not hear that Sheikh Mansour can do anything wrong, whereas United fans tend to come from a tradition of love the team, hate the club? Like, United fans will instantly decide that anyone associated with the ownership of Manchester United must be in it for the wrong reasons, and to be fair, have almost always been proved correct.
Yes. I think that's
short and sweet.
Could you elaborate on that, Phil?
Yeah. And it's even like, obviously not just kind of Sheikh Mansour or whatever, but I mean, taxing Shinawatra before him. They've had some proper owners, haven't they? Peter Swales, bloody hell. Peter Swales isn't even close, dare I say, to Shinawatra or
No.
Sheikh Mansour. But we've always Franny Lee, dare I say it, Bernstein.
Yep, forward with
If
Franny.
you do get a chance to read a book, and if you often you might need to put it in a different cover, David Bernstein's autobiography is a really good read because it's about football, but it's not a footballer or a manager, so you get that slightly different view. So obviously there's my plug, David Bernstein's book. He was probably the only decent one out of all of them we've had recently. But as a rule, yeah, and we've always kind of backed them. Even, it's like, say, for the Swayung stuff, who was, and it is one, and I think it comes back to this in relation to United, for all the harm he did Man City over the years, for the signing of players we couldn't afford and all that, it was all to match United. It was all to beat United. It was all to get one over on United. He hated United. He was a massive City. From all I would say, he nearly ruined City. No one loved City more than Peter Swayons. He was just a bloody useless businessman who didn't know what he was doing. And we wonder if that fits with the Cityitis and all that kind of stuff. It's like, for Pete's sake. But even as you say, for that, we kind of put up with it. And we didn't really, it was only when he started really messing about with Main Road. And that's all our stories have kind of gone to Main Road over the years. This once, 80 odd thousand capacity stand that was suddenly half boxes with 300 seats at the front in the Platt Lane, But it was like when he started doing that, is I think the only time really where the fans turned against him. And then beyond that, yeah, we kind of back our owners, rightly or wrongly, without wanting to look too deeply in some instances, and I will hold my hands up a little bit to that. As a rule, though, and our other big one that is slowly changing now over this last few years a little bit, is certainly since Sheikh Mansour's been there, and this isn't down to him, he's got no idea who we are. There's been 2 games, is it? And that kind of thing. We're just one of many, many investments that he's got. But as for the people running the club, as fans of watching City for 40 odd years, 40, 50 years, we've never been better looked after than this last 10, 15 years. Be that a lot of the crap and a lot of the razzmatazz and all that probably isn't massively going to appeal to us for. But when you think back to those 80s, 90s period when all the fans were just treated like crap, when you see the stuff at United and other clubs, where the owners aren't treating them well and just absolute cash cows to them. I feel we're on that cusp, though, of turning into that proper cash cow. The legacy fans aren't there, ones that aren't there now. This big new expansion at the Etihad. Hold your jokes back for a minute. But again, I don't even know if they have announced yet if they're going to sell any more season tickets off that. And that isn't because they couldn't. Yes, we have got a waiting list for season tickets. But apparently they haven't sold any new season tickets in like 4 years, 5 years. So even the natural attrition of people dying and then not putting those season tickets back on the market because they'd rather sell them to day trippers. And it's an issue across all of football. And I would hope, obviously maybe us 4 can be the start of this, but as you know, Andy, I was saying how I do work in Liverpool. So I have to spend a lot of time with Liverpool fans. It's always trying. I would love to, fans to come together properly and say, what do we want that is best for football? But we will always be partisan.
Yeah, you can be enemies for 90 minutes.
Andrew,
go on, Rod.
I just think that if the Premier League lose this case, and I think it's going to be the solicitors winding it up and sharing it among themselves. But if they come out and they lose this case, I honestly think it will bring the Super League so much quicker on. Because if the Premier League lose it, all the owners, and they're more American now, they're going to look at this and say, hang on a minute, you've put 115 charges against a club and you've lost. There's something wrong with your setup. Because, you've 115 charges, you've got to win some of them. And if you lose that case, and it's proved they lose the case, and the financial implications of that against the Premier League, I firmly believe that within, I was going to say 10 years, but 5 years, all your American owners that are there now, the Premier League itself is in grave, grave danger of being usurped. I really believe that.
I think that fits, like I say, Roy, with that view that I think obviously the Premiership are desperately to look at how they can save face on this in some way or form and not just lose the money. And exactly as you say, if they do lose it, it's because it was all, a lot of it was rushed in. If you remember when the government were first talking about the independent body to run it, and because the Premiership had no teeth. So they suddenly rushed out a whole raft of accusations at the time, and obviously we'll find out. I think they're now that really looking to save face, so they can say, well, we're not really going to punish you, but we'll show we've got some teeth and we'll get a bit of money off you, and it shows how good we are. But everybody knows they're useless.
Despite my attempts to get a fight going, we've all ended up as friends.
I know, but it's
Rollercoaster
almost
it's
agreed.
been.
Sorry. Apologies.
Yeah. On a week, I'm very happy into a week that started with me in hospital on a suspected heart attack. A genuine story. Looks like it probably wasn't. I hope to confirm that on Monday. We are all off now to take bets on how the Gallagher brothers are going to pretend the derby's important to them while they're playing in Mexico or somewhere. Reds, if you know of any spares for this game, yeah, I know. But one or two notable friends of this podcast still going without a brief so far. And Blues, do enjoy yourselves, but please, in the unlikely event of an adverse result, refrain from throwing horse manure. It doesn't do anyone any favours, and it's really not hygienic. It's a lesson we all need to learn. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.